Kristen, can you elaborate on one of the questions on the Tech River plan? The consultant that we would like to bring in, what would they do, or
right.
Can you share a little bit more information?
We've met with a few consultants who specialize in this kind of technology incubator setting. So they would help us find tenants. One of the line items was a hackathon, which they kind of taught me the lingo or what that means. And that's where you hold an event with people who enjoy or their hobby is technology, and so they come in. It's kind of a competitive event where they try to either build a software or hack into a program, and so that's what a hackathon is. The consultant would help us plan events or find the group of people we should be targeting who would locate into Tech River or who have a side business that they could expand into Tech River. So that's what the consultant cost would be for.
Any other questions or comments from board members, direction you'd like to give on?
With Kristen resigning and the elimination of the job, are all of these costs then still applicable? For example, some of the training costs or Photoshop training, is there somebody in the office that's going to require that training to take your place, or are there activities that
I would
discontinued?
hope that the EDC would intend to continue the marketing programs that we have instated in these. I think these marketing budgets, I created them because I think they're important and a vital piece of moving forward. So I don't know what the plan is, if a different staff person is taking over those responsibilities or what.
I'm not prepared to answer that today, but we will answer that for you at the August meeting.
Okay.
Good questions. Any other questions or comments from board members? This is our opportunity to give any additional input or direction. Obviously we can continue to talk about the budget in next month's meeting, but if we have any input or information that we would like to see presented in a different way. Okay.
I would like to remind each of you that on August 5th, the Board of County Commissioners is going to have a workshop, 6th, related to the Mosaic Agreement and the EDA funding. And I think it would certainly help all of you to gain a better, pardon?
I don't know, maybe that 6th is a different workshop. I don't know what
The 5th. 5th is, on Wednesday is the date that I have.
6th, that's our budget.
Isn't it part of that? That's the day that you asked me to be here.
Probably.
Sandy Meeks will send us a notice of that meeting, and I will send it to you, and I would ask each of you if you can be there. It will be maybe helpful in understanding some of the history and the nuances of both Senate Bill 3110 as it relates to the EDA and the Mosaic Agreement. I plan on trying to bullet out some documents that will help you understand your funding sources, and they do really impact the IDA probably more than the BOCC because you utilize both EDA grants and have the Mosaic Agreement money. So I would ask each of you if you could attend to please do so.
Okay, anything else that you need from us on the draft budgets?
We'll refine them, and they can be amended through the year. It's not like it's the end of the world. We just have to have something that is palatable for everyone involved, and we'll try to refine it from the comments today and come back to you in August.
Okay. We will move on into our project updates.
Should I? Jim, would you like to give a brief update on the incubator, the installation of the equipment, and the floors, please? Come up to the microphone.
Good morning.
Right now, what's going on over at the incubator is they're redoing the epoxy floor. There was a problem with it's functional. It's the right material, but when it was put on and began setting up, there was like roller marks, and it just wasn't very pretty. So they're doing that over. That should be completed Friday. It'll take about a week for it to set up, and then Roman from Valpak will be delivering the fill line equipment and starting to set it up and install. And the week after that, then the equipment that I've gathered, me and another one of our consultants on that will be installing the steam kettles and steam generators and that type of thing.
Okay. We also have the other grant pending before the EDA. It appears that their final award of those grants will be on September 11th. So we have a little over a month to go to know with certainty what that funding is, but I certainly feel like there will be some funding provided for the incubator, and we'll be able to continue moving it forward. The next item is the Commerce Park expansion. We did file a response to the lawsuit. We have heard nothing so far on what the status of that lawsuit is. We are planning on, you've seen that we've appropriated some money to move forward with the Commerce Park expansion. We certainly will hopefully be able to resolve the lawsuit before we expend any capital expenditures there, but time will tell what the timing of the settlement of the lawsuit and how we move forward. There is 30 acres on the south side of the creek that is included in the original Commerce Park. It's not affected by the rezone, so we could, if we had to, in order to have additional space available, begin designing the infrastructure there on a piecemeal basis. I'd prefer not to do that, but it's an option if land becomes an issue. And I'm still working with a client who I think would be a really good tenant for the back side of the park, and it's just going to depend on their time schedule as to whether or not we have to make decisions about moving across the creek. FORCAN is the site development plan is before the Planning and Zoning Board. It hopefully will be approved shortly, and the building plans are finalized. We should be able to go to bid. Once we know the contractors involved, we want to have an open house and ribbon cutting, I'm sorry, not an open house. And I hope that to happen in late August or early September. And Continuum Labs, I have Tricia Floyd here today from Clifton Larson Allen. Tricia has a few comments to make relative to the examination. And Tricia, if you'd come up at this time, give us an update and brief us on where we are going from here.
For the record, my name is Tricia Floyd. I'm an audit manager with Clifton Larson Allen, and I have also been working with this examination related to Continuum Labs. As far as an update, Mike Carter, the principal on the engagement, was here in June and had provided a status update of where we were. Subsequent to the June board meeting, we have been through all the information that was provided up through July 1st. In the beginning of July, we met with management and told them the status of where we were on the engagement. We told them all of, I guess not all, because there is an insane amount of detail involved with this, but we told them where we were on it and where we were back and forth in communications with Continuum Labs. And from that point, we are approximately $50,000 in on our internal WIP, which is our work in process. So the contract was for $25,000. So we have billed $25,000. And at this point, to continue, we do have results so far, but in order to continue having conversations back and forth with Continuum Labs to provide the additional information to substantiate the invoices, we are requesting an estimated $10,000 of additional fees.
And I recommend that we appropriate $10,000 to pay those fees.
Let me ask you a question. Is this examination for our benefit or Continuum Labs' benefit?
Who are you asking the question of?
You or Bill or anybody?
The examination is for our benefit.
For our benefit.
Yes.
Okay, and then we get it, what are we gonna do with it?
Well, the examination should clarify for us and help us understand if, in accordance with the contract, the funds were spent along the lines of the development of the project.
All right.
Any other questions or comments?
And there's nothing to tell us what direction it's going or anything, that's confidential at this point. What direction this examination's going, is it good, bad, indifferent?
There is a lot of detail involved in it, and at this point we have listed out questions and said from what we've seen thus far, this either substantiates the expense that we've seen on the listing or this does not substantiate the expense on the listing, and here's the additional information required in order to substantiate that.
Okay.
So that's the conversation back and forth.
Okay.
So at this point, if we had to just report, there would be a lot of unsubstantiated expenses. But that was prior to conversations back and forth and additional information being provided.
So from all of the material you've been able to review and substantiate to a point of making a finding, are there any material findings that you feel we need to be aware of at this point?
If we stopped currently where we are and no additional information was provided, yes, there would be.
But not on the items that you're requesting additional information, just what you have reviewed to completion so far. Is there anything that you feel like there are issues that we need to be aware of?
If additional information is provided and substantiated, then I don't believe that there will be any surprises. I think the related parties, everybody is well aware, and I think that will be substantiated, that there have been related party transactions and that they have occurred. So I'm not sure what else you guys would not be aware of.
I mean, right now, the board's not aware of anything that I know of. Unless there's certain people on this staff or board that is aware of what's going on. I mean, I know I'm not aware of anything that's going on.
I guess
If there's certain people that's got privileges to know what's going on, then okay. But as a board member, I don't know anything that's going on. And I just thought you said that certain people do know what's going on.
okay. One example would be that I guess just that somebody was employed with them that is a related party to somebody that was employed at the Industrial Development Authority. So, for instance, Brian Pelham was employed with Continuum Labs. So stuff like that would be the related parties.
Oh, okay.
So, and I'm not sure that, I mean, is everybody aware?
Yes.
So
If I may,
that would be an example.
And if I may state it a different way for clarification. Related party transactions would normally be material findings on an audit. In these circumstances, since the board is aware of all of these related party transactions, we are all aware of who was employed by the company. We were all aware of the involvement of the state representative that was involved in the company. All of those things are substantiated. Is that kind of what you're saying, or we're understanding?
That would be, it is not necessarily a finding. They are not, it does not mean that it was an error or that it was something that would be an error, I guess, or a written management letter comment. That's not what that means. Related party just would mean that we would present and say they had this transaction. It was with a related party, with the state representative, or with an employee of somebody at the IDA, or a board member, or whatever it may happen to be. We would present that information to say, yes, this is substantiated. So although you are already aware of it, correct, we have looked at that as well.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments from board members?
Move we advance the additional fund.
So we have a motion from Lori that we agree to the additional $10,000 to hopefully finish out the examination. Do we have a second?
Second.
Was there a second or not?
Yes, Doug seconded.
Okay.
Any further comments from board members?
We have an estimated time this will be complete.
It will probably not hit the August board meeting because that is 2 weeks out. And the additional information that has been provided since January 1st is approximately 40 documents. And I don't know that I will have enough time to look through the 40 documents and conclude before that point.
But the September meeting, you think you should?
Assuming that the rest of the information is provided. And then how many times you would like us to correlate back and forth with Continuum Labs is another issue, because if they are aware of what is missing now and they provide information but it still does not substantiate it, how many times do you want us to go back and forth to communicate that was this, but it wasn't enough because it was missing this, or this? That is a significant factor in the amount of time that it's going to take for us to complete this process.
If you would please copy me on all of those correspondence.
Absolutely.
Has that been a problem during the audit? Having to repeatedly ask for information or clarification?
From a time frame perspective, I would say yes and no. They are not aware of what it takes to substantiate evidence for an audit because they're a private company and they've never been through an audit. So to some extent, I would say no, and to some extent, I would say yes. Do I believe that we had clearly communicated everything that would be necessary? Yes, and the way that I went about that was to go over one invoice start to finish completely and communicate, and it was several hours of discussions, written communications, etc. And then from that point, I supplied the rest of the sample because I wanted there to be an accurate understanding of what it constituted instead of just having an abundance of information all over. So I believe that was communicated, but the additional information that was provided was not enough.
So you think it's been an education process that has increased the time frame?
It has been a significant education process on their side, for sure.
And you think that primarily it is an educational process, not them trying to deliberately withhold information?
The conversations that we've had verbally have absolutely no indication of deliberately trying to withhold any information.
Just that they're learning how the audit process works? Just
that it takes a lot of time to compile it. They've communicated that they have limited resources on staff to be able to devote that time to it. The records that we are looking for are as detailed as time cards, specifically time cards to allocate whether this person was coded to a design category or a marketing category, or the various categories. The spreadsheet that was provided details out and does an allocation split. So one employee may be allocated to 4 or 5 different areas. In order for me to verify the legitimacy of how the classification was within the invoice, I need to see a time card to substantiate that they worked on this section and then this section and this section. So that's the level of detail that we're looking at, and that may be part of why it's taking so long.
Now, are you also checking, like, here's an invoice out to company C that he owns, or company D, that, yes, the work was done? I mean, not just invoice from one company to another?
Those have been a lot of the questions that we've asked, and that's been in the most recent request is specifically for some of the professional services that were provided. It's pretty common for anybody that's providing professional services For us, for instance, when we submit an invoice, it has the person's name and how many hours they had worked. And we have detailed records to support all the way down to the description. I can tell you exactly to the point 1 hour what I was working on at what time. And I'm not saying that that has occurred, but that's what we are requesting is additional information, at least email records or things like that that may substantiate that marketing services were provided for a specific amount. And as far as your initial point of that of one paying another that are related companies, and we spent a significant amount of time researching the companies too that the invoices were from. So, and that was above and beyond just seeing an invoice. That included, searches on biz.org searches and things of that nature to try to identify the related parties or transactions that may have occurred. So I know that when we were originally looking at it, we did not anticipate it taking this much time at all.
Any other questions, comments from board members? We have a motion and a second. If there are no further questions or comments from board members, we will open for public comment. Mr. Kirkland?
All right, Kirkland, Bowling Green, Florida. This is a very, very sticky subject with us. But I would like to know how much has already been spent on this agreement thing that's supposed to be. I mean, where are we at financially? What have we spent here already? And how far are we going? This is the thing where they're going to pick out a few items and look at them and come back with a agreed upon thing. It's not a true audit, correct?
Is that all of your questions? We would
No.
Okay, go ahead and ask all of your questions. We can answer them at one time.
Well, okay, I asked those questions. When I get to that, then another question's in my mind. How does it compare to going ahead and do the real audit that some people are so reluctant to do on the board?
Does that finish your questions?
Yeah, we can take up my 3 minutes playing your game, or you can answer the questions, or I'll go sit down, or whatever.
No, the issue is we're not going to take up 30 minutes going back and forth. So I'd like to know everything you would like to know, and then we'll address your questions.
I can't tell you whether you answer my question. You're playing with my time here. If you're not going to answer the questions, don't answer. I'll make my comment. This thing stinks, and as a member of the public, seeing $10 or $12 million poured into this crap over there, and now Bill is so sure that it's going to work out that he's wanting to move over to fill up the space where all these phone center people was going to be working, rapid system was going to be there and all that. He must be pretty darn sure none of this is going to mature because he's wanting to move y'all over there. That's the smell I get from this thing. And we need a real audit. We need this thing to be done right. So don't answer the questions. Just do your thing.
No, I mean, we've kind of kept the same format the entire time where we ask you to present all of your questions so that we can address the things that we can address. I believe, Tricia, in your comments, you mentioned that we've been invoiced for $25,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, to answer your question, we've been invoiced for $25,000. We've had discussion fairly significantly at the last board meeting about we have moved from agreed upon procedures into an examination, which is closer to what you're discussing in an audit than what we originally agreed to. We had a fairly healthy debate about that and the detail and the involvement in the examination at our last board meeting. So to your point, we are getting more detailed information through Clifton Larson Allen's examination process than we were previously. So I would think that would answer some of your concerns, and that decision on behalf of the board would move closer into what you are suggesting or recommending, and perhaps you haven't been updated of that yet. Any other public comment?
I'd like to ask, I don't know who could answer this, but when this thing first started with LifeSync and Continuum Labs, weren't they aware that the records they would have to keep for I guess it's a government type auditing or examination or whatever, were they made aware that they had to follow these certain type rules and things that normally a private entity doesn't? Or is this caught them off guard?
To my knowledge, they were not aware. I would certainly welcome, any of the other board members that were here at the time, or as we've gone through the process, or Bill, to address that as well. To my knowledge, they were not aware. They were aware that what we were requesting during the monthly reviews would be what would be presented to the board, and not that it would be an in-depth financial examination, or definitely not to the degree that we are looking at now. Until the examination actually became an examination, which was within the last 4 weeks. We were all under the impression that we would be able to have the agreed upon procedure to review contract compliance. And that was the intent since the beginning of the project, or that was my understanding. If anybody else has anything different or to add to that, I would certainly welcome the input.
There's really two sides to this. We have a contract with them, and the purpose of what we're doing with Clifton Larson Allen is to determine if the conditions of the contract have been met. If they have not been met, then the board will negotiate those deficiencies and determine whether it's going to put financial or other types of penalties on the company in order to force a compliance with the contract. If the contract ultimately is not complied with, then we can take the results of this examination and seek a remedy in a civil court. In addition to that, there are other investigations going on that I can tell you with certainty will provide you any and everything that you need to know above and beyond our ability in a civil circumstance to do an audit, agreed upon procedures, or examination. And I feel like at the end of the day, you will not have a stone unturned.
Well, what I guess where I'm going with this is that when we as a board give a grant to people, what I'm hearing from you is that it's not our responsibility to know how the money was spent and where the money's spent, just if certain agreed on procedures were followed. Is that what you're saying?
The contract. If the contract is followed, we entered into a contract with this company.
But the contract, okay, if the contract doesn't spell out that we can do an audit of the money, then we can't do an audit?
The contract gives us access to their books. The condition of the examination does require an arduous performance on their part to produce records in a very time-consuming manner. And they are complying. It has been slow. They don't have a staff that is, as Tricia said, that is set up to do this. But we won't stop until we have every bit of information necessary to complete this examination. And then you'll get it. You'll be able to evaluate what was looked at and determine whether it was sufficient or not to determine whether or not they have or have not complied with the contract.
I guess that's what's got me confused is the contract. The contract takes precedent over knowing where the money went.
Well,
Or if it was spent properly. properly?
The two are the same.
They are, okay.
Well, and I think too that because of, this project is different and unique than any other project that we have done. Any other project that we've done would have been a bricks and mortar type of contract to construct a building and not in the arena of product development. You know, I don't know, I think it has been definitely an opportunity for us to learn if we are going to engage in any of these types of projects in the future. But I don't know that there would have been any way for us to establish an outline for what would appropriate expenses have been in constructing this software. So, you know, how the money was spent or was it spent appropriately, in my opinion, is, you know, wildly subjective when it comes to the actual development of the product versus if we have, you know, bricks and mortar construction type of project where, you know, you can audit all of the invoices, you can see the materials, you can see time worked. You know, we're trying to apply those concepts as much as possible to this project in looking at, you know, time cards and those types of things to substantiate the value of the work completed. So there is room to be confused about it because it is different than anything that we've ever undertaken, and that's why, you know, even to the point of this examination changing from the initial agreed upon procedures, you know, we have had to have some level of flexibility to make sure that we are seeing everything and understanding everything that we need to know, and also to, you know, improve our processes and learn from this project.
Madam Chair, ma'am. Tricia, I want to make sure that I'm understanding. Now, you and I have had a little conversation about how we are proceeding here. Correct me if I'm wrong. The 25% that we're talking about, basically, you have selected at random months, and you're looking at those months in their entirety, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so make sure everybody understands that. I thought that was the case. It's not that they're selecting particular invoices across the whole board. They actually have randomly selected how many months?
7.
7 months of the entire contract, and they are going through those months line by line, piece by piece. So I think when they finally get it, and that, if that tells you anything about how involved it is, and that kind of, because what we have seen, those are, you know $300,000 a month, and the money going in dozens of different directions, and they're having to follow those, every one of those months in their entirety, and I think that's, I didn't appreciate the enormity of what they were doing until she told me that.
And in addition, or to add to that, isn't the 25% of the draws equivalent to 40% of the actual money? So even though we are only looking at or still following the 25% of the draws, we're actually having an examination of 40% of the actual dollars.
And when there's one correction to what you said, Mr. Thompson, that I did not randomly select, I judgmentally selected. So one of the examples is in the LifeSync Technologies billings. There was one that had a $615,000 figure for an API. I specifically chose that because it was a one-time expense, and we wanted to be able to substantiate that. So that $615,000 is not reoccurring, therefore it elevates the total expenditure number when you add the 7 together. So there were specific things where if it was a one-time cost or a first time for something that looks like it was related to a contract, we may have selected that one.
Okay, so we still have the motion and the second. Do we have any further public comment? If not, to clarify what that was, we have a motion on the floor to approve an additional $10,000 to go ahead and further the examination with Continuum Labs. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you.
On